So is this going straight to your phone or straight to the computer?
It's
file
wired in to the
Okay,
computer.
that's cool. I know.
So
you
you can.
I always thought I had to transfer a big old file over your computer.
There's an app called the. Welcome to Lecture and Conversation with James AV number 4. We're moving backwards from outcomes. We've covered job performance and organizational commitment, and now we're moving backwards in this organizational behavior model to individual mechanisms. And this really is the hub of what we're studying in organizational behavior. Individual mechanisms are the things that happen inside of people that we believe helps to maximize effort within job performance and their effort directed towards organizational commitment, or their attitudes directed towards organizational commitment. And again, we're trying to maximize those things. So we're trying to understand and have a greater impact upon the things that will maximize job performance and maximize organizational commitment. And those are the individual mechanisms. And we're going to kick individual mechanisms off with job satisfaction. This represents how people feel about their job. What in the world is job satisfaction?
Yeah. Probably one of the very first things that you look at in organizational behavior, like when you start getting into it for a master's or PhD, is job satisfaction, because it's really, really simple.
Why?
Like most of the time, because it's called a cognitive affective construct, which just means when you think about your job, do you like it? Yeah, I like my job. And not everything about it, but I like, on a scale of 1 to 5. The question to assess it is really like this. A scale of 1 to 5, how satisfied are you with your job? Overall, are you satisfied with your job? Are you satisfied with the job you do? 3 questions, basically ask the same thing. You've just measured. Now, congratulations, you're doing psychoanalysis at that point, and you got satisfied. It's pretty simple, and there's a few weird things about it. 80s, 90s, it was the big push. Yes, we want people to perform, but man, we want people to love their job. That evolved into an emphasis on job and worker engagement. We want employee engagement. Mm-hmm. Satisfaction and engagement are very highly correlated, and commitment. They're all with each other, all very highly correlated. Which makes some people like me go, aren't we really tapping the same thing? Like it's that similar. But there are some nuances with job satisfaction. But let me talk about this first. There's a guy named Tom Wright who does a lot of research on what's called the Happy Productive Worker thesis. Thesis came out back in the 80s, and it was, if you can get people satisfied with their job, they are more likely to exert more effort in their job, so they're going to be better at their job. So satisfaction leads to performance. Million studies that found, wow, satisfaction and performance are correlated.
Yeah.
Not causation, correlated, right?
So it's James's life tagline.
Right.
Correlation is not causation.
Right. So then they reversed it. And experiment worked like this. They'd ask you and I, how much do you like ping pong? And we both say, on a scale of 1 to 5, say a 3. I like ping pong. I'm satisfied with ping pong, if you will.
Yeah.
And then they would give us mock trainings. In my training, they actually wouldn't train me at all. In your training, they actually wouldn't train you at all. But the outcome of the training, I would play against somebody who was horrible and really competitive. Mm-hmm. So I'd beat them. I'm good at ping pong. And they were upset about it. So I know I'm good at ping pong. You would play with somebody who didn't care and just smoked you. Then at the end of that, they'd say, are you satisfied with ping pong? You would say, not at all. I would say, I love ping pong. So that shows that it's not if you're satisfied, you do better. But if you do better, you're more satisfied. Right.
Yeah.
So it went back and forth. At this point, the conclusion in the field is there's probably some mutual or dual causality. They each influence each other.
Yeah.
Right? If you're satisfied, you'll probably work harder. But if you think you're better, you're actually more satisfied. Synergistic. That's why I hate golf. I hate golf because I suck at it. Yeah. I love playing pool, even though I think you beat me last time we played. I love playing pool. I'm weird. I'm pretty good at it. I didn't start out hating golf.
I think you just hit the 8 ball in, by the way. I don't think I beat you.
I started out sucking at golf, and then I hated golf.
Yeah.
So you can't kind of go back and forth. But the bottom line is better, for the most part, certainly for the citizenship behaviors we talked about earlier, if people are satisfied in their jobs.
And in general, people are satisfied with their jobs when the job provides things that they value. And value are things that we try to either consciously or subconsciously are things that we're trying to attain. So if your job provides those things, whether it's through incentives or whether it's through compensation or how you're treated by your supervisor or the culture of the organization, all those things can impact whether or not this job provides things that I value. Am I able to go home and take care of my family? If that's of high value to me, then I may be inclined to be, at least in that particular category, a little bit more satisfied with my job. And researchers have tried to look into some categories of values that people might be looking for within an organization, either subconsciously or consciously. Things like pay, or how an organization might handle opportunities for promotion within an organization, how you're treated by your supervisor or your manager, how you get along with or are treated by your coworkers, and then lastly, the work itself. And James is going to dive a little bit into a few of these right now. Can I ask a question that is way too far ahead of how much have we studied the impacts of managers on job satisfaction?
Yeah. I might use the word meta-analysis sometimes. Earlier we talked about replication and convergence, multiple studies. A meta-analysis is basically all the studies on this. Sometimes it's hundreds, sometimes it's even thousands of studies, and we crunch them all into one, and we do a technique where you disattenuate for error, right? And say, okay, what do we really know about this thing at this point? What do we really know about it? Most of the research on job satisfaction is about the work itself.
Job design.
So Tim Judge he's one of the best guys on this. He's down in Florida. I don't know if he's retired. He did the meta-analysis multiple times and basically found the number one predictor of job satisfaction is the work itself.
Right.
Because if you ask me if I like my manager, that's a different question than if I like my job.
So great. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say right up there in the top 3 is manager.
So good example. Fishmongers. The normal job of a fishmonger, clean fish, sell fish, right? Most fishmongers, up until Pike's Place Market, hated their jobs.
Right.
High turnover.
Dirty job. Nobody wants to do it.
Nobody wants to do it. Low application rate.
Right.
Suddenly, this sexy job comes along where you throw fish.
Right.
You still have to clean fish in the background.
You
still have to
them.
prep them for market and all that stuff. But it took this job and suddenly changed the dynamics of it. Now they were involved in the sale, so they changed the design of the job, increased job satisfaction. More people wanted it. The reputation of the organization increased. People wanted to do that job. Soon it became one of the highest applied for blue-collar jobs.
And high, low turnover,
and high performance.
Yeah,
all through job design.
It's all perfect job design,
And I'd imagine that they also changed how they managed as well. So sometimes when you're thinking through those things, you're also a good manager.
Well, there's
so
that
sometimes
heuristic.
it's hard to separate them, I guess, maybe.
Well, there's that heuristic that people don't leave jobs, people leave people. Specifically, they leave their manager. Yeah. It's like, I'm out. And you ask people why. My manager was sexually harassed me. My manager was unfair. My manager didn't respect me. So, yeah. But the work itself is almost always embedded in, it's a simple construct, or simple thing to explain. The more complex the work is, the more people like it, on average, across the board.
Got it.
So this is why really boring jobs, where you do the same thing over and over, everyone's cooking meth in the parking lot. There's no, and human beings have this innate built-in need
Everyone is, James?
100%. There's no exceptions.
Good Lord.
I went to a meat processing plant in Nebraska. And they were huge turnover, fights. They hired all kinds of felons, which on one hand was really cool, but on the other hand, now they have a bunch of saws and knives they're using to carve the meat, and they're all in one really smelly room. And if you've been around like meat processing, like cow comes in one side, stays out, it's nasty, right?
You don't stop smelling like the oil of that.
No, forever, yeah. And they brought us in, huge turnover, drug problems. Like when you do a drug test, like, bro, if we drug tested, we would have no employees.
Right.
Like what the impetus for it was, this is my joke, there was a meth bust in the parking lot. They were literally making it in a van, and the employees would go out on their breaks. It's like, holy smokes, okay, what are we going to do here? So we engage the job characteristics model, which is in this chapter, and we go, It's a completely dumbed down, boring job. No stimulation. What do we do? So we go, okay.
Job rotation.
That's what we settled on. Yeah. Can we do job enrichment? Can we give one person, okay, you're in charge of this cow.
Job enlargement.
You do everything all the way through. Or job enlargement. You used to cut ribs, and now we're going to have you do ribs, ribeye, T-bone, etc. Right. And they kept going, we're not set up like that. We're not set up like that. So we created stations. Right. So here there's certain cuts.
Real quick. Job enrichment, increasing the depth of
responsibility. This is mine.
Job enlargement.
Yep.
It's
more horizontal, more tasks, basically. Job enlargement is a natural consequence of layoffs. You lay off a bunch of people, then fewer people are going to be doing more things.
Budget cuts.
Right.
Yeah, got it.
And then the last one we settled on for them.
But it doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be, no, not at all. Was job rotation. We go, okay, we have an incoming group, we have a steak group, a burger group, a cut and wrap group, a delivery group, right? Mm-hmm. You've been this rib guy here for the 6 months, which is one of our longest tenured employees at 6 months. But guess what? You do that Monday and Tuesday. On Wednesday and Thursday, you actually go down to processing. Mm-hmm. And on Friday and Saturday, you actually go down to cut and wrap. Mm-hmm. And turnover tanked. Mm-hmm. No more drug busts. I don't know if that was why. But turnover, not only did performance go up, turnover went way down. So people just stayed longer. Mm-hmm. And so what was the magic? It was just on the job characteristics model, skill variety. Mm-hmm. They just got to do more things.
Right.
And so the job was cooler than it was last week.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit more about the job characteristics model and how it relates to job satisfaction. So what are some of the main key terms that we want to know within the job characteristics model?
Yep. Every single job falls somewhere on all 5 of those job characteristics. So there's 3 parts to the model, right? I'm going to give you your left. So from your left to right, there are job characteristics, things like skill variety. Do you have to have a bunch of different skills to do the job, or is it just one? You can be high or low. Those 5 job characteristics make you feel a certain way about your job. They're called experienced psychological states. And how you feel about your job predicts whether or not you like your job.
Got it.
It's not that complicated. This
mechanisms,
feelings,
outcomes.
Got it. 100%.
Got it.
So what we do as managers is we look at the mechanisms and we go, can we change those for the better? Mm-hmm. If we can change them for the better, people feel better about their jobs. If they feel about better jobs, the assumption, and it's a good model, is that they will do things different. Side note, this theory was voted the most useful theory in 100 years of organizational behavior. So just straight usefulness, more than any leadership theory, more than goal setting was number 2. Every manager can look at it and go, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
The job sucks in this way, and I can make this little change in the job, and now it doesn't suck so bad.
So we have all sorts of things that we can try to impact from a value standpoint. And what James is trying to hit forward here, or trying to push forward, is the fact that if you're going to focus on something that you're trying to improve in order to improve job satisfaction, the best thing you can do is do a great job at how you're designing the work. And you can incorporate all sorts of different things into how you design jobs. And that moves us into what James introduced, which is the job characteristics theory. That if we can impact 5 core areas of a job, variety, identity, significance, autonomy, and feedback, if we can impact those things in a more desirable way, in ways that people value, then we're more likely to increase satisfaction in the work itself, which is has the highest impact on overall job satisfaction, which then can potentially impact our overall outcomes. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into each one of these characteristics, and we'll start with variety. And boy, oh boy, do I love terminology in management and human resources, because the words are so simple. What does variety mean? Well, the word is used in the definition itself. It means that we try to incorporate a certain amount of variety of skills that can be utilized and activities that can be performed in a particular job. And if we can increase the varieties to some level of desirable levels, we might tend to increase satisfaction in the work itself. That might drive more satisfaction in the job itself, which then actually will potentially drive better outcomes. Variety also helps to create a little bit more focus. If you've ever worked into a job or in a job that did the same thing over and over and over again, you've known that I can tend to lose focus. And especially if you're in like a quality control position and you got to focus on the new quality that's going past. Let's use apple packing companies as an example. If you're sitting there looking at a bunch of red apples coming across, and you thousands and thousands of apples, and you're just going and go, oh my gosh. And there are certainly automated processes that can do that, but you have eyes that are keeping on that stuff. And if you got apples zooming past you all the time, pretty soon after about an hour, everything just looks red. And one of the things we try to incorporate into those types of jobs in order to create variety is we do job rotation. We start rotating people between different parts of the production process or the assembly line process to the finished good, to the final packing. And that just helps to break things up a little bit. So not only does it gives people some variety through the day, but it also helps to make them more efficient, more effective from a focus standpoint. And all that can tend to increase overall job performance and potentially organizational commitment, their willingness to stick around at that particular job or that particular company. So that's variety. I've worked in jobs where I've certainly been the HR manager and HR director of places that needed to create more variety, and we redesigned jobs to create variety. But I've also worked in jobs that had very little variety. One of the first things that I did when I came out of high school, I was a mover, which had a ton of variety. It was rad. I loved that job. But I was also on the weekends, I worked for a nursery. And my first job or sets of tasks at the nursery was filling those trays. You know those trays that you can buy pansies in at the nurseries or the stores? They have they're usually 6 by 8 or whatever they are. And each one of them has dirt in them. Each one of them has a flower in them. Well, it was my job to put the dirt in the trays. That was what I did for the first week I was there. And so I had a stack of trays on my left. I had a big pile of dirt in front of me on this big, huge gardening table, and I had a little shovel, and I would shovel in dirt, level it out, and put the trays over on the right, go to the left. Great standard operating procedures. Very little task variety in that job. And it was mind-numbing. Absolutely mind-numbing. And so what I did was I tried to challenge myself, as James talked about before. Sometimes job satisfaction can be tied to how good of a job that you're doing. And we'll talk about that in the feedback cycle here in a little bit. And so I created my own little feedback cycle of, let me time myself to see how many trays I can fill, at least through these types of operations, and go to the right. And then I try to think, would it be better for me to fill a bunch of trays and then level them off? Would it be better for me to fill and level off at the same time and then stack them up? And I would time myself and try to figure out the best way of doing that one task so that I could be the best at what I did. And I started to get satisfaction out of doing it better and better and better. But at some point during that week, it kind of leveled off, and I really couldn't improve my performance anymore. And because there was no variety, if they didn't start incorporating different things into my world, I probably would have become dissatisfied. My performance might have gone down. I might have started to avoid work, and I might have also not been committed to the organization, and my desire to stay might have waned, and I might have left. But luckily, they incorporated some more different types of tasks in my job over time and began to grow through what we call job enlargement. And eventually I got job enrichment, and I did some job rotation. And through that, increased my engagement and also increased my outcomes over time. So variety is a big part of what we're trying to accomplish when we look at job design. And then we move into task identity. And this is really just the idea that in a job, can somebody own something from start to finish, or they can see the fruit of all of their labor accumulate into some sort of end output. And so if somebody owns something start to finish, it might create a little bit more satisfaction to say, man, look at the fruits of my labor. Look what I created. That can tend to increase satisfaction. Now, we sacrifice a lot of task identity for efficiency. So because one person does it all, maybe they're not the best at all those things, and they got to do 1,000 different things, and it takes some time to transition from one thing to another. And that's why we've moved a lot of production into production lines where people do one task at a time until its completion. And certainly you want to try to have task identity if you can, but it's not always good. Sometimes too much task identity sacrifices efficiency. And also sometimes if you have task identity, you can create liability for your organizations, like in accounting. You don't want somebody doing everything from start to finish in all of your accounting processes, because that can create opportunities for fraud. So we put stopgaps in to make sure we have internal controls, and we separate duties out to make sure that one person can't, create something in the system and then pay something in the system as well, and afford them the opportunity for fraud. So task identity is great, but there are certain areas where you need to limit it to either increase efficiencies or make sure that you're not creating liability for the organization. And the next one is task significance. And this is, what would I say about this? This is the degree to which people see how much their job impacts either the product or the organization or society as a whole. They want to know that what they're doing matters. And if we can increase task significance, we can tend to increase potential satisfaction in the work itself. And for some jobs, that is easier to see than others. So for example, if I am a salesperson, I can certainly see my revenue that I'm driving to the organization. I can certainly see the volume of products that I'm selling. And all that, I can see how that maybe impacts objective measurements to the organization. And that might give me a ton of satisfaction. That's a really easy job to go, wow, look at the impact that you're having overall. But then you rewind, after sales and go into the production cycle and look at somebody who's doing data entry in the production office. They don't get to see the finished goods maybe. They don't get to see the raw material getting purchased. They don't get to see where they fit into the whole puzzle. They just know that their job is to take these stacks of pieces of paper that are turned in by truck drivers and people in the production facility, and then enter them into the system. And although the job is vital, they don't get to see it right away because they're just, interfacing with their computer and interfacing with people, and they don't get to see how their work impacts everything moving forward through the organization. It's just not as evident. And one of our jobs as managers and supervisors is to communicate the importance of those tasks that people are doing so that we can increase their perception of their task significance. They can know where they fit in the world. You're communicating really a sense of purpose. What you do matters greatly. We had a lot of positions like these in organizations that I served. One of them was, and that's the one I'm really describing, it's called a work in process position at one of our organizations. And we used to have a ton of turnover in that job. And when we started working with, and also a ton of inaccuracies, which drove a ton of bad decision making and also bad data that would hit our financials. And so we went in, talked to the manager, and tried to figure out, well, what is going on? We have good people, like our hiring processes are good. What is it that's causing people to turn over? And a lot of folks would say, God, just, it doesn't seem like my job matters. Like, yes, your job matters. So we worked on when we were onboarding people and regularly throughout the cycle of their employment, tried to communicate, here's what you're doing and why it matters. And we almost stepped in as a substitute for the obviousness of other jobs. Like other jobs might be really, really obvious on how much they impact the organization and society, and jobs like this not as obvious. So we would be a substitute for that as managers and supervisors to say, it is important. You need to know where it fits and paint the picture of where it fits so that they can see that it does have a large impact. They can know that their accuracy is celebrated. They can know that their errors cause potential issues through the production lines and through the system. And so if we can increase that significance, we can potentially increase satisfaction in the work. The next one is autonomy, and that's the amount of freedom and discretion we can give to people for their own decision-making on how the work gets done. In some jobs, again, kind of like significance and identity and others, some jobs have a lot built into them by nature, and some you have to incorporate some level of autonomy into. So, for example, if I'm in an entry-level position, I'm probably not going to have a ton of autonomy. I'm going to be trained on standard operating procedures on a particular thing to get it done. But over time, you may be able to increase my autonomy by giving me some sort of what we call job enrichment, ownership over a particular process, depth of responsibility to say, well, yes, we do these standard operating procedures, but I want you to be the subject matter expert in this particular area. And being that subject matter expert, you have discretion on, reviewing that process and making sure that we're doing it the most efficient and effective way in the most engaging way possible. And so through that, I'm creating some autonomy in a job that by nature doesn't have a lot of autonomy. Now, if I'm a product purchaser, I might have a ton of autonomy in my job. I get to pick how I negotiate. I may not pick what materials I've got to purchase, but how I get there within the constraint of the values and the culture of our organization, I've got a ton of leeway. And so there's a lot of autonomy that are built into jobs by nature, and some that might not have them in there by nature, but we can certainly create some autonomy through how we design the work for individuals. The next one is feedback. And this isn't feedback from a supervisor or feedback from a manager. This is that the very nature of the job provides you feedback on how you're doing. So if I'm a bean counter and I count a lot of beans, then I know exactly how I'm doing. And if I'm doing them within a certain amount of time frame, I know that I can do some sort of efficient counting of beans. Or companies that I've worked at, there was a lot of feedback cycles on quantity. So we knew that we wanted to hit a certain amount of tons produced per hour of particular types of material, and each container of material was about 23 to 25 metric tons. And so when I filled a container, I knew that I produced 23 to 25 metric tons within a certain amount of time frame, and we wanted to get X amount of containers through a particular production line during a day shift or during a night shift. So we needed to have X amount of containers per hour produced. And so you could easily equate that to seeing some sort of a feedback loop when that container pulls away from the dock. That I've produced X. That's feedback that's built into the job itself. And if we can create line of sight to some sort of feedback from the employee that's not needed to be provided by the supervisor, it's provided by the work itself, then you can tend to potentially increase satisfaction because you're not waiting for people to give you feedback, although that is good too. They can see the feedback right in front of them. So if it is so, I don't want to say self-evident, would that be a good word? If it's so self-evident, why don't organizations do it more often?
Yeah, it's weighing the costs and benefits. So here would be an example of something that wouldn't make sense. I know that a burger flipper job at McDonald's is really dumb, right? Mm-hmm. Low task identity. They don't get to do the whole thing. Low skill variety. Right. The task meaningfulness. Like right. You're proud. This is my fiance, the burger flipper. Yeah. Right. It's like it's not so good.
I can explain to you all I want the reason why your job exists. It still won't change the fact that I just flip burgers. Got it.
But if I was to highly enrich that job, I say, okay, Mike, you're the burger flipper. You need to start looking at marketing trends. How many burgers do we sell on weekends, holiday weekends, during the week, at what shifts? I want you to go inspect the farms. What kind of beef do we at McDonald's want to get? I want you to consider ingredients, right? Pre-cook, don't post-cook. How do we get the smoke flavor? Work with the chefs, right? Work with the research scientists and figure out, you make all the orders, and if we don't have enough burgers on Friday and we lose money, that's on you. Autonomy. You get to own it all. Well, you can do that, but if that person screws up, empowerment means you are giving them your power as a manager.
For sure.
McDonald's is set up, they have over 100% turnover every year, most McDonald's locations, which means they hire more than the number of people they have there every single year. Yeah. So if I hire you as a burger flipper, you're productive in about 7 hours, right?
Yeah.
That's because it's really low on the job characteristics model. If I enrich that job, it wouldn't be worth it to me. It's just too much risk.
Right. It would cost me more, create risk.
Yep.
And I'm willing to deal with that turnover because I can train people so fast.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and it also saves me some money because I can continuously pay lower rates.
Right. 100%. I mean, Washington's different, but yeah, you can pay lower rates.
Well, lower rates, and I got to pay somebody who's been here a year.
Yep.
So.
Yep. So if you can do those things, they're great. But it's a content model and a process model.
Right.
What I mean by that is the content of the job characteristics
Right.
predicts the content of how you feel about your job.
Right.
And the utility or the usefulness is, how do I change the job characteristics? Well, you got three things: job rotation, job enlargement, job enrichment.
Now, you've heard James and I say three words over and over again: job enrichment. Start with job enlargement, job enrichment, job rotation. The second one is covered in the book, job enrichment. But let's talk about all three, and I'm going to use hand signals. For those of you who have had me in HRM 381, you know that each one of these hand signals means something. So let's start with job enlargement. It's just the expansion of tasks. No more responsibility. You just have more things to do, more duties, more tasks. You have a lot more variety. So if we do job enlargement, we're increasing job variety or skill variety. When we do job enrichment, we're increasing the depth of responsibility that people have over particular jobs. So I might give you more coordination over particular activities. I might delegate some of the ownership over the process to you. You might become a lead in the organization. All those would be an enrichment or an increasing of depth of responsibility over the work. And then we have job rotation. It's literally moving people from job to job. It's not just expanding the tasks within a particular job. I'm literally going to take you and move you into a different job. And we can do that, during the day. We can do it multiple times during the day. We can do it, once a week. We can do it once a month. We can do it, a year at a time. A lot of times we use job rotation with our succession planning models and our employee development models. But it also can be designed into the work as well to increase satisfaction. Let's see, I'm debating whether to tell you. I'll share a quick story. So where we've seen this impact our organization, at least from my personal implementation as a leader in an organization from a human resources standpoint, is we had a job, we had about 48% turnover. And we tanked that turnover, which was good, down to about 17 or 18%. I think it was about 17%. It's been so long ago, the exact numbers, but it was high teens. I'm going to say 17 within a year. And then continued a downward trend over time. But what we did to lower that turnover was we created, through job enrichment, job enlargement, job rotation, and then also incorporated pay in there, we created more satisfaction in the job, which created higher performance and created more retention or organizational commitment, which increased our retention, people not wanting to leave the organization. So what did we do? We took a job that was just the production worker, and we broke it up into multiple levels. Level one was you had very few task variety, you had very little task variety, and you came into the organization and you knew that we would paint a picture of the pathway for you. And you came in and we paid you minimum wage or just above minimum wage. And if you performed over the first few months, 3 months, you get a 3-month review. And if you're performing well, you move to production level 2. With that comes a small increase and also comes job enlargement. And through that job enlargement, now you have more variety. And so you're working towards something, you earn the opportunity to get variety. If you don't perform, we manage you up or manage you out, and that is what it is. But if you do perform within that time frame, then you got advanced. And so now you have promotion involved. It's one of our values. You have pay involved, and you have the work itself involved. Tried to hit, and supervision's involved in there. Hopefully the supervisor's coaching and all that stuff, and that provides you satisfaction. So you're hitting on multiple levels of values to increase overall job satisfaction. But when we look at the work itself, we're creating job enlargement. And then you move from 1 to 2, and then after another 3 months, similar process, 2 to 3, pay bump, advancement, all that stuff, job enlargement. And eventually after, I think it was a year, some jobs, maybe a year and a half, you would earn your right to then job enrichment. And job enrichment would come through getting a lot more autonomy and a lot more task significance. So you would potentially go down the route of becoming a technical expert and or becoming a people leader. So you might get lead responsibilities, and that was job enrichment, depth of responsibility, either over technical things or over people. And through that, created a ton of engagement with our employees. I shouldn't say that. A ton of satisfaction with our employees. Increased overall work performance. Our outputs went through the roof, and also increased organizational commitment. Our turnover went through the floor. So these can be incredibly impactful, designing the work itself, but also incorporating other values into your decision making to increase job satisfaction.
In my head, like if someone wanted to go, okay, where are we at on this as a company? So I'd say to a manager, what are your core competencies? Like, where can you not fail? Google can't fail at programming. It's okay if their landscapers stink, right? But they can't fail at programming. So what are the most important things to you? And I would engage those people and just say, sometimes it's so simple.
What will it take?
Yeah, what would make your job better? And you're going to get a million things that you can't do anything about. Right. But we had a scenario where there's a bunch of engineers.
Being careful not to create an inadvertent bargaining unit.
Right.
Individually having those conversations.
But
Sorry.
No, you're right. We had a big office building. There's just walls up all over. Everyone had and the engineers. There was just 2 to an office, and when they had to work with another engineer, which is hard enough to get engineers to talk to other humans, let alone other engineers, right? It was an extra cost. They come out and go around. Like what would make this better? And then one guy goes, "Can we just knock the walls down?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah, we can do that." We knocked all the walls down. Just put up little partitions. They stand up, and be like, "Hey. We just ordered tech part 636 and it hasn't come in." "Oh yeah, it's delayed 24 hours. Okay." Yeah. Then they're like, "Whoa, it's more human interaction." Back to what we talked about earlier.
And more effective.
Yeah, it was way better.
Win-win.
Sometimes it's not. It doesn't take that much to make a job better. You just got to find out what the sweet spots are.
Throw fish.
Right.
Versus handing
Throw
it.
fish versus handing it. Great point.
What else do you want to cover in job satisfaction?
Yeah, on job satisfaction, keep in mind that it does have a correlation with performance. It's really small, like 5%, but it will make your life so much better if people are satisfied.
Got it.
So if you have a bunch of dissatisfied people that are doing their jobs well, as a manager, it just sucks. It's not fun.
Yeah.
So if we can do small things to get them satisfied, keep that good performance, your life is much easier.
And the best mechanisms that we know of to increase satisfaction is through...
Well, on the manager side, no one is the work. Is some kind of intellectual stimulation.
Redesigning work.
Yep, redesigning work. On the manager side, this is a whole other topic we'll probably get to, and that has to do with procedural justice. Just be fair.
Yeah.
Whatever decision you make sure you can defend it, and it's reasonably fair.
Yeah, falls under equity theory
right.
and all that stuff.
Right.
Cool.
Awesome. Chapter 4.
Word.